Chapter 136. Ancient Wind City was a mountain city, situated on the outskirts of the boundless mountains. The entire city was built against the mountain, so the roads in the city all sloped down. The holy church passing through the gloomy city gates, a wide, open road appeared before them. It slanted upwards, and at the end was a manor that seemed like a city of palaces. It occupied the entire ancient Wind City. It was even more impressive than the Hawkwolf Guard in Jiaping City. On the two sides of the road, the households were all decorated with lanterns and streamers, as if they were preparing for a grand celebration. However, the people on the road showed no joy at all. The news of Qian Rongji's return as a Hawkwolf Guard quickly reached the majestic manor. Afterwards, as if they had triggered some sort of mechanism, over 100 men in tight uniforms surged out noisily, herding all the people on the road into the alleyways on the two sides. There was a person every 10 steps, standing on the two sides of the road and looking straight ahead. As the three of them rode past, the men mustered up their breaths and called out, "Welcome back, young miss." Even though the sound of the hooves reached the entrance of the manor, Qian Rongji held her head high and rode at the very front. Li Qingshan and Diao Fei followed behind her by half a horse's length, following beside her like they were her attendants and guards. This was what they had discussed during the past few days. They had to respect Qian Rongji so that the people of the Qian family would not be wary of her. For the sake of 1,000 qi-gathering pills, they obviously had no issues with something as trivial as this. However, Li Qingshan could sense that Qian Rongji's current state did not seem to be an act. Instead, she really did possess some satisfaction and pride from returning triumphantly. The main entrance of the manor stood several meters tall, and there were several dozen steps at the front, which made it seem even more grand and noble. A pair of stone lions gazed down majestically. In Li Qingshan's eyes, they seemed rather vicious. The vermilion door swung open loudly, and a skinny old man in luxurious robes emerged. He was the leader of the Qian family, Qian Yannian. He had personally come to receive the three of them. "Patriarch, I fulfilled your orders and joined the Hawkwolf Guard." Qian Rongji dismounted and bowed gracefully. Before he could kneel, a pair of skinny hands grabbed his arm. "Didn't I say it before? Just call me Grandpa. You are now an official, how can you bow to an old man like me?" Li Qingshan and Diao Fei glanced at each other. Qian Yannian's movements were shockingly fast. He didn't have the slowness of the old man at all. Although his words were polite, his body had a threatening aura. This was the natural pressure that strong qi practitioners exerted on weak qi practitioners. Qian Yannian said, "These two are your colleagues." Diao Fei clasped his hands. "That's right. Under Serge's orders, we've come to accompany Rongji to visit our relatives and congratulate the great-grandfather Qian on his 132nd birthday." Li Qingshan clasped his hands as well and smiled silently. He only studied the greatest target of this trip. Qian Yannian's white hair was sparse, and his face was covered in faint age spots. His nose was so soft that it drooped down like it was about to melt. His skinny body pushed against the luxurious clothes, making him seem like an old monkey wearing human clothes. It was slightly comical, yet also slightly disgusting. If it were not for his shining eyes and his swift movements just now, Li Qingshan basically would have doubted whether this old man who was about to die was their greatest enemy on this trip. First-rate masters who practiced internal arts could only live for around 100 years without any hidden injuries. A fifth-layer qi practitioner could only live for a few more decades. At Qian Yannian's age, his cultivation had already begun to decline. Qian Rongji's information was indeed true. He glanced at the 100 treasures pouch on Qian Yannian's waist and wondered whether there were several hundred qi condensation pills in there. However, his gaze had already passed over his shoulder and landed on the group of people behind the main entrance. More accurately, it was a group of qi practitioners. There were men and women, young and old, scholars and monks, but they were not from the Qian family. Moreover, they were people who had come to congratulate him. Their gazes towards him were no longer as enthusiastic. Some of them even carried contempt and coldness. Li Qingshan remembered what Zhou Wenbin had said. They, the hawks and dogs of the empire, were very shunned by the entire cultivation world. especially those from sects and clans. Everyone liked their freedom, free from supervision and control. However, the Hawkwolf Guard just happened to be the representatives of legalism that watched over the world and upheld the law. Qian Yannian waved his hand. Please. In a secret room, Qian Yannian's face no longer possessed the same valiance he displayed in front of everyone. Instead, he stared at Qian Rongji with bloodshot eyes. Where's Qian Rongming? Qian Rongji said sorrowfully, Rongming, he's been killed by someone. What? Qian Yannian grabbed Qian Rongji's shoulder firmly. Who was it? Who did it? Why are you fine? Qian Rongming was not an adopted surname. Instead, he was the true bloodline of the Qian family. He had taken in a lot of wives and concubines, finding a suitable descendant among over 100 descendants. Qian Rongji said, It's Li Qingshan. He's the kid who came with me today. He's the one who killed Rongming. She actually told him the entire story in detail. All Qian Yannian could do was accept this reality. He said viciously, if he weren't a Hawkwolf Guard, I would definitely tear him to pieces. Afterwards, he used his skinny hand to touch Qian Rongji's tender cheek. But fortunately you're here. His eyes flickered with an obscene light. Qian Rongji said, Grandfather, you're willing to spare them, but they're unwilling to spare you. What did you say? Qian Yannian was surprised. We've come on a secret mission from the Hawkwolf Guard this time. We've come to investigate the Qian family. How is that possible? I've managed ancient Wind City like it's an iron bucket. I've never been stingy with what needs to be done. Why would the Hawkwolf Guard target me? The silver light in Qian Yannian's eyes vanished, replaced with some panic. Small clans like them feared the Hawkwolf Guard the most. Once they were in the sights of those hawks and hounds, they would be hunted down by the falcons and eaten by the wolves. Qian Rongji said, It's still that Li Qingshan. He stole Brother Rongming's 100 treasures pouch, and he became greedy. He resented me out of jealousy, so he spoke ill of the Qian family to our commander Zhua. Qian Yannian said, Didn't you speak up for the Qian family? What's the point of having you around? Bitch, have you rebelled against the Qian family? Qian Rongji said, How could I not speak up? However, Li Qingshan even has some background in Clear River City. He joined the Hawkwolf Guard without taking part in the competition. Zhuo Zhibua was afraid of offending him, so he ordered us to investigate. Rongji has only achieved her current glory because of the Qian family's great kindness. Without the Qian family, there would be no grandfather, and there would be no Rongji right now. Why would she betray the Qian family? As she said that, she was on the verge of tears, as if she was tempted to die. Qian Yannian recalled how obedient she had been in the past, and his expression eased up slightly. Then what do we do now? Why don't we give him some bribes? If not, you'll have to sacrifice yourself for the Qian family. Qian Rongji said, Grandfather, he's a ravenous wolf who eats people whole. As long as he swallows the entire Qian family, how can they be defeated with just a single bone? If you don't believe me, just watch their reactions carefully. Qian Yannian said, What do we do? If I hadn't listened to you and sent you to join the Hawkwolf Guard, why would we have attracted such a disaster? Qian Rongji became vicious. We can't let them, especially that Li Qingshan, leave ancient Wind City alive. Qian Yannian said, You want me to kill Hawkwolf Guards? As long as Li Qingshan remains, the Qian family will never be at peace. I'll blame their deaths on something else. Grandfather, this is all for the Qian family. Quite a while later, Qian Rongji emerged from the secret room. The resplendent sunlight seemed to purge the gloom in her heart. As she emerged from the courtyard, a middle-aged man blocked her way. Big brother. Qian Rongji bowed politely. The middle-aged man reached out to touch her cheek. Qian Rongji turned her head and dodged. Big brother, don't be like that. The old man was Qian Yannian's eldest grandson, Qian Xingwei. Although he did not have the talent for practicing qi, he had practiced internal martial arts. He was the main caretaker of the entire Qian family. Qian Xingwei was furious. He pinched Qian Rongji's chin. Stop putting on an act. Just because you've become a Hawkwolf Guard doesn't mean you can act all high and mighty. As long as you're still a part of the Qian family, you have to listen to me. Don't forget about the great kindness the Qian family has shown you. Qian Rongji said, "Yes, big brother." Rongji wouldn't dare. Suddenly, a few servants rushed over from afar. Only then did Qian Xingwei release her. He ordered, "Come to my room tonight." He watched Qian Rongji leave before spitting on the ground. "So what if you're a qi practitioner?" He could not see the sinister smile on Qian Rongji's face. Everyone had to pay the price. Night fell and lanterns were lit up. Everyone in the hall were important guests who had come to attend the birthday banquet. Although the birthday banquet was only tomorrow, most of them had arrived a day earlier to show their respect. Among them, the most distinguished ones were obviously the dozen or so qi practitioners. Li Qingshan and Diao Fei sat in the seats of honor due to their identities as Hawkwolf guards. Qian Yannian introduced everyone. When he reached Li Qingshan, he said, "This is the young hero of the Hawkwolf Guard, Li Qingshan, Sir Li." No matter what everyone thought, they all said things like, "I've heard a lot about him," or "I admire him." "You're called Li Qingshan?" A sharp voice rang out. Li Qingshan looked in the direction of the voice and saw a scholar sitting on the ground. His hair was disheveled and he seemed quite wild. He was also a third-layer qi practitioner, and he currently looked over with hostility. Li Qingshan said, "That's right. And who are you, sir?" "This is Gong Liangbai, known as the Mad Scholar of the Jianghu. He comes from the humble Maple Academy." Qian Yannian introduced the two of them first. Afterwards, Gong Liangbai said, "What, do you recognize Sir Li?" In this world where even the district magistrates were powerful qi practitioners, places like academies were not just for studying. Just like in Buddhist and Daoist temples, practicing martial arts and practicing qi were part of the curriculum. Gong Liangbai did not even look at Qian Yannian. He only stared at Li Qingshan. "Do you recognize Wei Dandong?" Li Qingshan said, "I don't." Gong Liangbai said, "But he does recognize you. If I've guessed correctly, you come from Qingyang City, right? That junior brother of mine paid a visit there a few months ago. His body has always been frail since he was young. Originally, he wanted to find a way to treat it, but he never returned." Suddenly, Li Qingshan recalled the sickly scholar who had come for the spiritual ginseng back in Qingyang City. He was the first-rate master to die to his hands in front of the Wind Mountain Divine Temple. The other first-rate masters were all middle-aged men. Only he was in his 20s, so he had a rather deep impression of him. "I think I've met him a few times." Gong Liangbai straightened his back subconsciously. And then? Chapter 137. Gong Liangbai suddenly stood up. He widened his eyes and pointed at Li Qingshan. He was momentarily speechless, as if he had never expected him to admit it so straightforwardly. 7***. Li Qingshan drank his wine calmly and said indifferently, "You're still in academy, and you've studied the books of sages, yet you've raised bandits who kill and steal, and you even need me to clean up your mess for you. Go back and properly reflect on yourself." He had never thought he would run into an enemy here. Thinking about it, this place was not too far from Qingyang City, which was why he ran into Qian Rongji as soon as he emerged from the mountains. The news of the spiritual ginseng had drawn over all the masters nearby. There were not a lot of qi practitioners in a radius of several hundred kilometers. Even if they were pulled out, they would only form a small circle. It was nothing strange for them to appear in ancient Wind City. "Though if I kill that thieving scholar, then I kill him. What about you?" The guests discussed among themselves. "So there's a grievance like that. This Hawkwolf guard is just too arrogant. He killed someone, yet he says he's cleaning up his mess for someone else. Yeah, he dares to speak to a third-layer qi practitioner like that as a second-layer qi practitioner. Keep your voice down. Don't cause trouble." Although they had no idea what had happened, most of them stood on the side of the humble Maple Academy instinctively. Logically speaking, the school of Confucianism and the school of legalism belonged to the 100 schools of thought. They were a part of the Great Xia Empire, but to most qi practitioners, scholars were much more pleasing to the eye than police officers. As for Qian Rongji and Diao Fei, they had grown rather accustomed to Li Qingshan's attitude. As long as he was in the right, he would ignore everyone. He was like that even when he faced Zhao Liangqing and Zhuo Zhibua, let alone a scholar. Invisible true qi burst out of his body, causing Gong Liangbai's robes to ruffle. The heavy table before him toppled over, producing a series of clattering sounds. That junior brother of mine was only a step away from breaking through to the innate realm. Originally, he could have reached the second layer very quickly, and it's all because of you. Li Qingshan remained seated. It's a good thing that I made my move early. He's only a first-rate expert, yet he dares to bully others like this. If he were to advance to the innate realm, it would be terrible. With a flash of white light, Gong Liangbai drew his sword from his waist and pointed it at Li Qingshan from afar. Others might fear the harsh laws of your Hawkwolf Guard, but I, a disciple of Confucianism, do not. It's not a question of whether I'm afraid or not, but a question of whether I'm right or not. If I'm wrong, it's fine even if I have to kneel. But you're also a scholar. You don't follow justice and only care about personal feelings. Have all the books you've read gone to waste? You're pissing me off. Gong Liangbai couldn't argue back, so he took a step forward and slashed his sword down at Li Qingshan's head. Holy Church Diao Fei's expression changed. He pressed down on the wind-entwining saber, and his body went from kneeling to half-kneeling. Li Qingshan's expression did not change. He did not move at all. He lowered his head and tasted his alcohol. He said indifferently, "If you touch even a hair on me, I'd like to see if there's still a place for you in the world. Can the humble Maple Academy protect you?" The sword stopped above Li Qingshan's head, trembling slightly, but it was unable to fall down. Gong Liangbai's expression changed as he gazed at the swordsman Li Qingshan. This young man had not given off any aura at all the entire time, but when he did things, he possessed a boldness that no one dared to look down on. As the boss, Qian Yannian had allowed the matter to develop without interfering. It was exactly because he had heard what Qian Rongji had said that he wanted Li Qingshan to suffer at the hands of someone else. However, he never thought the matter would end up like this. He could not help but re-evaluate Li Qingshan. This young man who could kill Qian Rongming really was not easy to deal with. It would be inappropriate if he still did not make an appearance at this time. He said, "Both of you are my guests. What are you doing? Do you have any irreconcilable grudges? Just treat it as giving me some face." Li Qingshan put down his wine cup and raised his head. He said, "Have you thought it through? If you have, then scram. Don't embarrass yourself here." With a swish of his sword, a corner of the table was cut off. Gong Liangbai looked around and felt that everyone was looking at him, as if mocking him for not daring to touch even a hair on Li Qingshan's head. He then ran out of the hall with large strides. Qian Yannian hurriedly ordered his men to chase after him. His eyes turned and he already had a plan in mind. He glanced at Li Qingshan and thought, "Brat, you won't be able to be arrogant for long." The banquet resumed. This time, the main character of the banquet was actually Qian Rongji, the young mistress who had brought glory to the Qian clan. With her laughter, the atmosphere gradually became lively again, as if nothing had happened. Many young Qi practitioners stared at her as their hearts skipped a beat. Qian Rongji used the time she spent toasting to shoot a glance at Li Qingshan and Diao Fei, expressing that the plan was going smoothly. Afterwards, when she looked back at Qian Yannian, the look in her eyes seemed to have changed again. Li Qingshan only smiled and tipped his head back, drinking all the wine in his cup. The moon hung high in the sky. Li Qingshan and Diao Fei returned to their residence, reeking of alcohol. Diao Fei said, "I thought I was arrogant enough, but you're 10 times more arrogant than me." Li Qingshan said, "That's not arrogance. I'm telling the truth." "What's wrong with telling the truth?" Diao Fei said, "The Hawkwolf Guard won't let them do whatever they want." As he thought about the great fortune he was about to receive, he seemed to become even more intoxicated. Li Qingshan said, "I have some things I need to discuss with you." Suddenly, Diao Fei discovered that Li Qingshan's eyes were even clearer than the moon, and they gave off a faint murderous aura. They seemed to shine with red light. Although he said it was a discussion, Li Qingshan turned around and returned to his room to rest as soon as he finished speaking, leaving Diao Fei standing there blankly. This was not going according to the plan. Some people were ruining the plan, while others were coming up with a new plan. I've already convinced Gong Liangbai to stay a few more days and introduce you to him. There are too many people right now, so we'll take action after the birthday banquet. We'll make it seem like they've died together. As long as we succeed, you'll have done a great service to the Qian family, Qian Yannian said to Qian Rongji. Qian Rongji said, Rongji is willing to do anything for the Qian family. In the dead of night, little and fiddled with a few qi-gathering pills in Li Qingshan's hand. She raised her head as if she was saying, that's all there is left? Li Qingshan rubbed Little An's head. Yeah, and I'm using them sparingly. But don't worry, there'll be a lot of them very soon. 1,000. He casually tossed another qi-gathering pill into his mouth and began to cultivate. He needed some time to consolidate his current cultivation. The bright moon disappeared before rising once more, illuminating the mountain city. Lanterns were hung everywhere in the Qian estate. They were bright red, as if there was a mountain fire. Guests gathered, and all sorts of people came to congratulate the Qian family. The banquet spread from the inside to the outside of the hall, from the top of the mountain to the bottom of the mountain. The noise of people filled the air, as if a noisy river of fire was flowing. The entire ancient Wind City was alarmed. However, there were only a dozen or so tables in the main hall of the Qian estate. They were specially used to receive esteemed guests. The eldest grandson, Qian Xingwei, personally received the guests at the entrance with a list of gifts. He announced loudly, the profound sage of the Sky River sect presents a pair of blood crystals. Gong Liangbai of the Humble Maple Academy presents 10 jade fragrance fruits. Most of them were rare treasures that Li Qingshan had never even heard of before. When he and Diao Fei stood before Qian Xingwei, he thought about it and took out the last qi-gathering pill, placing it in his hand. Qian Xingwei was stunned. Only a single qi-gathering pill? Li Qingshan said, go ahead. Sir Li Qingshan and Diao Fei of the Hawkwolf Guard presents a congratulatory gift of a qi-gathering pill. The guests looked over in surprise, wanting to see just who was so stingy. However, all they saw was Li Qingshan looking around calmly, while Diao Fei lowered his head deeply. The bystanders only thought he was embarrassed, but they failed to notice the mixed emotions on his face. Sweat dripped down his forehead as he muttered in an almost undetectable voice. Sending a goose feather from a great distance away is a great gift. A gray-robed old man with grizzled hair walked over with a smile to smooth things over. The aura he gave off was that of a third-layer qi practitioner. Li Qingshan said, Sir, you must be one of the 2 elders of the Qian family, that's something or other. It's an honor to meet you. The only 2 third-layer qi practitioners of the Qian family were known as the 2 elders of the Qian family. They were both Qian Yanyan's foster sons, and they had come to receive the esteemed guests in Qian Yanyan's place. The corner of the old man's eye twitched, and he suppressed his anger. That's right. This way please, sir. Last night, Qian Yanyan had urgently summoned the core members of the Qian family to discuss a plan against Li Qingshan. He had already learnt about Qian Yanyan's plan. After tonight, Li Qingshan would be a dead man, so there was obviously no need for him to argue with a dead man. Li Qingshan said, May I ask where that elder is? Afterwards, he followed the old man's gaze and saw another old man. He said to Diao Fei indifferently, Brother Diao, why don't you go over and get closer to him? The old man found this rather strange. Li Qingshan could actually order around a third-layer qi practitioner Hawkwolf Guard, and why did he want to get closer to him? However, he did not have the time to think too much about it. Li Qingshan pulled him by the hand and made his way over. He asked, Is it over there? He left Diao Fei behind as he stood in the flow of people. He looked around rather blankly with his slanted eyes, basically like a child at a loss for what to do. Then he glanced at Li Qingshan before finally moving his feet, making his way over to the other old man. He muttered a little louder, and a female attendant walked past him. In confusion, she heard this sir from the Hawkwolf Guard say, That's far too fucking arrogant. Qian Rongji stood beside Qian Yannian. She felt that something was amiss. Suddenly, she seemed to realize something, and her expression changed abruptly. The old man brought Li Qingshan to his seat and discovered that Li Qingshan had suddenly stopped talking. Li Qingshan gazed at him with his deep, pitch-black eyes and said, "You're trying to harm me, aren't you? You sure know how to joke." The old man smiled, but he was unable to smile anymore very soon. He felt like Li Qingshan's grip on his wrist had become like a pair of iron pincers, gradually tightening. His expression suddenly changed. Boom, boom, boom. 3 explosions rang through the hall, echoing through the entire Qian estate. Air surged into the surroundings, and the crowd parted in fright. All they saw was a pitch-black person pointing at Diao Fei with difficulty. He wanted to say something, but he was unable to say anything. He gave off a burnt smell. Xianxia said in surprise and fury, "What did you do?" Diao Fei had only used this opportunity to stick 3 scarlet fire talismans on the other elder of the Qian family. Afterwards, he did not look at anyone. He did not even look at the furious Xianxia. Instead, he passed through the crowd and looked at Li Qingshan nearby. In the past, Diao Fei had once thought that even he would be in danger if he was within 10 steps of Li Qingshan. And just how far away was the old man from Li Qingshan? Half a step? Back then, Li Qingshan had only been a first-layer Qi practitioner, but now he was a second-layer Qi practitioner. Within the cries, Li Qingshan grabbed the old man's neck with a single hand and raised him high into the air. An arrogant smile filled with murderousness appeared on his face. With a crack, Li Qingshan snapped the old man's neck and tossed him towards Xianxia. "I'll also give you 2 corpses. The gift is small, but the sentiment is great. Please accept it." Chapter 138. The 2 elders of the Qian clan were at the 3rd layer of Qi refinement. They were not small fries. Diao Fei could not have easily killed either of them in a direct confrontation. Sacred Hall, however, they did not expect that someone would attack them during the birthday banquet in front of so many people. They were killed on the spot without being able to put up any resistance. From then on, the Qian clan no longer had a 3rd-layer Qi practitioner. Surrounded by the Qian clan's experts, guests, and dozens of Qi practitioners, Diao Fei nervously approached Li Qingshan. For the first time, he felt a sense of security when he was close to someone. Last night, Li Qingshan only said 3 sentences to him: "Don't tell Qian Rongji. Do it tomorrow night at the birthday banquet. I'll deal with Xianxia." These 3 sentences caused Diao Fei to hesitate for a day and a night. In the end, he decided to go all out. Li Qingshan ignored the dozens of Qi practitioners. He took out a document and read it out loud. According to Qian Rongji's report, the Qian clan has committed the following illegal acts. First, killing the innocent. Second, murdering an official of the imperial court. His voice was filled with true energy. It was even louder than the rumble just now. It even reached ancient wine city at the foot of the mountain. Everyone stopped eating and drinking and raised their heads to listen. "Qian Rongji, this is impossible." Xianxia originally wanted to take action, but when he heard the name Qian Rongji, he became stunned. Out of all the children, the cleverest and most obedient girl who had brought him so much joy, how could she be condemned to him? However, when he turned around, Qian Rongji was no longer by his side. Unaffected, Li Qingshan continued to read. "Under the orders of Jiaping City's Black Eagle Commander, Zhuo Zhibua, we are here to investigate. After finding out the truth, we will execute Xianxia and the other criminals on the spot." Xianxia searched for Qian Rongji in the crowd, only to discover that she had somehow made her way through the crowd to stand beside Li Qingshan and Diao Fei, staring at Li Qingshan with a dark expression. Li Qingshan had completely ruined her plans. The words, "execute him on the spot," continued to reverberate in the air. All schemes and plots were nothing in Li Qingshan's eyes. Li Qingshan put down the file and said, "Those who are not involved, feel free to leave and avoid being implicated. If anyone dares to obstruct justice, kill without mercy." Qianxin's eyes widened. "It's really you? You bitch." Gong Liangbai said, "Miss Qian, is this true?" Qian Rongji bit her lips and said, "It's all true. You can ask any citizen of ancient Wind City and they will know. Our Commander Zhuo is on his way. Everyone hurry up and leave." Although she hated Li Qingshan to the core, she had no choice but to stand on his side. Otherwise, she would definitely be destroyed by the furious Qian Yannian. Near Jiaping, there was no one who had not heard of Zhuozhibu's name, who would actually be willing to openly oppose the Hawkwolf Guard for the sake of the evil Qian family. The Qi practitioners all looked at one another. Who knew who moved first, but they all made their way out of the hall. However, their gazes towards Li Qingshan and the others were like they were looking at dead people. They did not plan on staying behind to help the Qian family. Most importantly, the Qian family did not need their help at all. A third-layer Qi practitioner and 2 second-layer Qi practitioners would be destroyed by Qian Yinyan's wrath in the blink of an eye. Thinking of that, they instead moved even faster. If Zhuozhibu really did come and saw the corpses of the 3 Hawkwolf guards, they would be treated as accomplices of the Qian family. That would be an undeserved disaster. They moved very quickly, and the servants and maidservants all used this opportunity to leave as well. In the blink of an eye, the hall was empty. Only the people of the Qian family and the 2 corpses remained. Countless guests made their way down the mountain. Only the people of the Qian family went against the flow and made their way to the hall. Li Qingshan said, "Qian Yannian, you've committed a heinous crime." Compared to sneaky assassinations, he still preferred a situation like this, where he was straightforward. Looking back at Diao Fei and Chen Rongji, he used a special method to unite the 2 of them who were on different sides with each other to face the enemy before them together. Qian Yannian walked over furiously, and the tiles on the floor shattered loudly. He stared straight at Chen Rongji. "You ungrateful bitch." With Li Qingshan's loud declaration, there was no longer any room for negotiation. All schemes were useless. Even if they killed Li Qingshan and the others, the Qian family would appear on the blacklist of the Hawkwolf Guard, becoming targets that the Hawkwolf Guard had to kill. The Qian family was already on the brink of destruction. Death, all of this was caused by Qian Rongji, whom he had raised after so much difficulty. He called out hoarsely, "I've given you everything." Qian Rongji smiled instead. Her smile was very sweet. "Grandfather, haven't I come to return the favor?" Afterwards, she said to the remaining second-layer Qi practitioners in the hall, "We'll only kill those of the Qian family's bloodline. You've been oppressed by Qian Yannian for all these years, so do you want to die with the Qian family now?" Among the 5 second-layer Qi practitioners, only one of them was a direct descendant of Qian Yannian's. Originally, they all stared at Qian Rongji furiously, but when they heard that, they looked at one another. It was impossible for the furious Qian Yannian to let the 3 Hawkwolf guards leave, but they all understood the consequences of killing a Hawkwolf guard in public. If they remained here, they would really be implicated in this terrifying crime. They would become criminals hunted down by the world, and they would no longer be able to hide. "Shut up!" Qian Yannian struck out furiously. A hand condensed from true qi shot through the air towards Qian Rongji. With a flash, the blade was drawn from its sheath. It sounded like a tiger's roar. The wind-entwining blade was placed before the pale-faced Qian Rongji. The hand of true qi that had been cut in half landed on the ground and the door beam. A great pit was left behind on the ground, and the entire door beam had collapsed. Between it was the pale-faced Qian Rongji. Li Qingshan gripped the wind-entwining blade and said to Qian Rongji without even looking back, "Keep going." This woman sure had a glib tongue. It was rather useful. However, Qian Rongji's response was to turn around and run. Li Qingshan was taken aback. He really had overestimated this woman. However, he never thought that the second-layer qi practitioners of the Qian family would all break through the window and flee at the same time. Even the one who was related to Qian Yannian by blood, basically his own son, was no exception. This wasn't just because of Qian Rongji's words. It was also because Qian Yinyan's rule over the past few years had caused the entire family to fall apart. There wasn't the slightest bit of unity in them. Normally, they could still maintain their unity by relying on their strength and medicinal pills. However, once they encountered a huge crisis, they would immediately collapse into a pile of loose sand. Qian Yannian ignored Li Qingshan and the others. He struck out with his palm again, and a second-layer qi practitioner was slammed into the wall. All of his bones and internal organs were crushed. He looked at Qian Yanyan and said, "Father." He was Qian Yanyan's only biological son among these people. Qian Yanyan's eyes were bloodshot as he said, "Traitors must all die. I'll leave this place to you. I'll go after them." Diao Fei said and actually followed him out. He didn't have the courage to face a fifth-layer Qi practitioner. Due to different reasons, the Great Hall became a place of disaster that everyone avoided. Only Li Qingshan and Qian Yanyan were left. Li Qingshan muttered to himself, "This is good too. All the benefits are mine." Then he raised his head and said to Qian Yanyan, "Today is your birthday. This day next year will be the anniversary of your death." Qian Yanyan walked up to Li Qingshan step by step. His skinny, old monkey-like figure seemed to suddenly grow taller, almost casting a shadow over Li Qingshan. 132 years ago, a child was born in ancient Wind City. He was born into poverty, never had enough to eat, and was bullied by others. Until one day he was noticed by a passing Daoist, who brought him to the mountains to cultivate. 30 years later he returned. He was already a middle-aged man close to 40 years old. He went to those who had bullied him 30 years ago, and those who were now also close to 40 years old, and killed them one by one. Then he established the Qian family. He didn't have a woman, so he madly took in wives and concubines, turning all the women he fancied into playthings. He didn't have a decent residence, so he seized the property of a country squire and expanded it into the Qian manor. He wanted to make up for everything he didn't enjoy. Almost 100 years had passed, and the Qian family became the only big family in ancient Wind City. 5 generations lived under the same roof, and there were hundreds of children and grandchildren. He wanted to continue his bloodline of power. Qian Rongji ran out of the hall, her mind racing. She had to leave this place as soon as possible and find a place to hide. After Qian Yanyan killed Li Qingshan, she would be his next target. "You bitch. How dare you betray the Qian family? You will die a horrible death. Grandpa will kill you." Qian Rongji hadn't gone far when she heard someone shouting at her from behind. She turned around and saw that it was the eldest grandson of the Qian family, Qian Xingwei. He didn't dare to participate in the battle between Qi practitioners, so he took advantage of the crowd just now to reach the outside of the hall. However, he was unwilling to leave, so he hid in a corner and waited for his grandfather, Qian Yanyan, to settle everything. Qian Rongji stopped. She turned around and gazed down the mountain. The people surnamed Qian were currently killing their way up. Among them, countless familiar faces appeared in her mind too. Lewd faces, contemptuous gazes, threatening fists. Countless faces merged into a single, blurry face. She held her forehead and felt a stabbing pain in her mind. 2 thoughts began to struggle. One was life, and the other was death. Qian Xingwei saw that Qian Rongji had stopped, lowered her head, and her body was trembling. He thought she was afraid and roared, "You bitch! Slut! The Qian family shouldn't have taken you in. I should have skinned you back then." Qian Rongji raised her head and smiled. She even used her slender fingers to tidy her hair and walked toward Qian Xingwei. Life was the desire to live, and death was the evil fire of revenge. At this moment, life was no longer important. Death occupied her heart. "What are you trying to do?" Qian Xingwei finally felt a trace of fear. In the past, with Qian Yanyan around, she wouldn't resist no matter what he did to her. He was also used to her meekness, which was why he dared to jump out and scold her. At this moment, he seemed to suddenly remember that Qian Rongji was a powerful Qi practitioner. "Grandpa, save me." Qian Xingwei used his qinggong and leaped out while shouting loudly. Qian Rongji reached out with her right hand and grabbed Qian Xingwei's shoulder. She pulled him in front of her and pointed her index finger at Qian Xingwei's forehead. "Why are you running?" Her long fingernail pierced through, and a trickle of blood flowed down. Stop. I'm your older brother." Qian Rongji smiled and said softly, "Skinned me? Is this how you skin me?" Her fingernail slid down like a sharp paper knife, and a scream resounded in front of the hall. Chapter 139. Xingwei. Qian Yannian couldn't help but take a step forward when he heard the scream outside the hall. How could Templar Li Qingshan let go of such an opening? His wind-entwining blade slashed horizontally at Qian Yannian's waist. Qian Yannian's expression changed. He never thought that a second-layer Qi practitioner would be able to unleash such a ferocious strike. To Qian Yannian, the fact that Li Qingshan was able to kill one of the Qian family's 2 elders, the gray-clothed elder, was a shameful sneak attack. Therefore, he did not take Li Qingshan seriously at all and only treated him as a bug that could be killed at any time. The reason why he did not strike down immediately was because he was still hesitating over the consequences of killing a Hawkwolf guard. He wondered if there was any way he could turn the situation around. However, Li Qingshan clearly told Qian Yannian that it was not a question of whether or not he wanted to kill him, but rather, he wanted to kill him. "Kid, you're courting death," Qian Yannian bellowed. His chicken claw-like left hand stretched out and grabbed the blade, stopping the swift and violent strike. If one looked carefully, there was only a hair's breadth between the saber and the palm. Qian Yannian's true qi and Li Qingshan's true qi clashed intensely within this small distance. It was as if 2 armies were fighting on a long battle line. One side was made up of elite soldiers, but they were no match for an enemy that was 100 times their size. The blood vessels in Li Qingshan's body expanded, and he exerted all his strength on the saber, but he couldn't make the saber move an inch. Qian Yannian was also surprised. With his strength, he actually couldn't snatch the saber from Li Qingshan's hands. This brat's strength was simply astonishing. The indestructible wind-entwining saber let out a teeth-aching groan. Hundreds of thoughts flashed through their minds, but in reality, it only took an instant. Both of them reacted almost at the same time. Qian Yannian threw a punch at Li Qingshan's chest, while Li Qingshan grabbed at Qian Yannian's head, completely ignoring that palm. When they exchanged blows just now, it was as if they were going to perish together. Li Qingshan was not confident in anything else, but he was extremely confident in his own defense. "I have a lot of HP and high defense. Enduring 8 or 10 moves from you is nothing, but if you take a single move from me, you will die." Qian Yannian felt like if that claw landed, even his head would be crushed. With it, just when Li Qingshan wanted to take advantage, he saw 17 or 18 fists condensed from his true qi. Qian Yannian's condense, rush over, rush and defend himself. Just when Li Qingshan wanted to use this opportunity to gain the upper hand, he saw 17 or 18 fists condensed from true qi rush towards him. The wind-entwining blade turned into a streak of light, protecting him. Bang! 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 A series of banging sounds could be heard, and a strong wind blew. The huge table was overturned, and all the candles in the hall were extinguished. St. Teet. Sent. Teet. Teet. Li Qingshan with the Li Qing. Lilis, Hilit King his feet to his see you're a body practitioner. Qian Yannian exclaimed. If he was an ordinary second-layer Qi practitioner, his true Qi would have already shattered his lungs. He might even have been torn to shreds on the spot, unless he used a body-tempering technique to strengthen his body. Li Qingshan didn't feel any discomfort. Instead, he felt like he was stretching his muscles and bones. He stared at Qian Yannian with bloodthirsty excitement in his eyes. Qian Yannian looked at Li Qingshan. The disdain in his eyes was gone, replaced by a little more caution. However, it was only a little. He had been too careless just now, giving Li Qingshan the opportunity to swing his blade at him. A second-layer Qi practitioner was definitely no match for a fifth-layer Qi practitioner. This was common sense. Do you really think you can kill me just because you blocked a few of my moves? Since you're seeking death, I'll fulfill your wish. Then I'll go kill that bitch, Qian Rongji. Outside the hall, Qian Xingwei's screams became more and more shrill, but Qian Yannian turned a deaf ear. Although he liked this eldest grandson, he had many grandchildren. It didn't matter if 1 or 2 died. While Qian Yannian was speaking, Li Qingshan didn't stay idle. He held his saber with both hands and raised it high. The pure true qi in his body flowed through his yang heel meridian and flowed into the wind-entwining saber. It turned into a layer of bright light on the saber. As he waved his arm, a sharp wind blade whistled through the air towards Qian Yannian. Holy Hall! Qian Yannian snorted coldly. He sucked in a deep breath, and a streak of golden light emerged from his nostrils. It pierced through the wind blade and shot towards Li Qingshan, leaving behind a thin, golden line in the air. Flying sword? Wasn't it only available to those in the 6th layer? Li Qingshan was a little surprised, but he immediately realized that it wasn't a flying sword, but some kind of spell. However, it was much more powerful than normal spells. It allowed a 5th layer Qi practitioner to have the skills of a 6th layer Qi practitioner. The information Chen Rongji had given him said that Chen Yannian was only in the 4th layer of Qi practitioner. That was completely false. As a 5th layer Qi practitioner, Chen Yannian obviously didn't cultivate the innate method of training of Qi, which only allowed him to reach the 3rd layer of Qi practitioner. Instead, he cultivated the even stronger Gung Metal Fiendish Qi technique. And this move was the Gung Metal Sword technique of the Gung Metal Fiendish Qi technique. The metal lungs condensed fiendish Qi within. The lungs opened at the nose and came out to form a sword of Qi. The sword light pierced through the air, creating a sharp whistle. If it was a normal person, just hearing this whistle would be the end of them. Li Qingshan bent his knees slightly and leapt high into the air. The sword Qi brushed past the soles of his feet. Taking advantage of the fact that he couldn't retrieve the sword Qi, he leapt towards Chen Yannian and quickly closed the distance between them. Chen Yannian looked at Li Qingshan, who was pouncing towards him, and let out another cold snort. His eyes were filled with malice. Suddenly, another sword Qi came out of his nostrils and stabbed towards Li Qingshan in midair. At the same time, another sword Qi turned around and stabbed towards Li Qingshan's back. There were 2 lungs on the left and 1 on the right. The Gung Metal Sword Qi also had 2, 1 on the left and 1 on the right. Li Qingshan hooked his right foot around the beam and flipped up, avoiding the crisscrossing swords of Qi by a hair's breadth. However, in the next moment, the sword Qi pierced through the beam from bottom to top. He abruptly leaned back, and the sword Qi brushed past his face, illuminating his eyebrows. Li Qingshan was already prepared. The blade in his hand flashed, and like an antelope hanging its horn, it struck the sword Qi without a trace. Clang! The blade and the sword clashed. The wind-entwining blade actually made a small nick, but it also broke the sword Qi. However, before he could celebrate, the broken sword Qi once again condensed, just that it lacked a trace of fiendish Qi. Li Qingshan leapt backwards, and the sword of Qi pursued him relentlessly. He constantly leapt and twisted in the spacious hall, avoiding the sword of Qi by a hair's breadth every time. He was as nimble as a monkey. When he couldn't dodge, he would use the wind-entwining blade to forcefully strike the sword Qi, temporarily blocking it. He realized that although the sword Qi was close to a flying sword, it wasn't as agile and fast as Zhou Wenbin's flying sword. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to dodge it with his body. However, it must be because Chen Yannian's strength wasn't there yet. If he had cultivated to the 6th level of Qi refinement, this sword Qi would definitely be a weapon no less powerful than a flying sword. Chen Yannian was so angry that his face was pale. He grunted continuously, focusing even more on controlling the Gung Metal Sword Qi to chase after Li Qingshan. However, he was extremely cautious, leaving a sword Qi around him. It wasn't just because he was worried about Li Qingshan's golden body assassination, but also because he was too old and his mental state had declined. It was difficult for him to control 2 swords at the same time. However, he believed that with just 1 sword Qi, it was enough to kill Li Qingshan. With 1 attack and 1 defense, he was in an invincible position with no openings. Li Qingshan was shocked. So, a 5th level Qi refinement cultivator was already so powerful. What kind of cultivation method did he cultivate? Although he didn't know the name of the Gung Metal Fiendish Qi manual, he understood that these 2 swords must be the intrinsic spell of the cultivation method. That was why he could control them so easily. In comparison, the innate training of Qi manual was just like its name. It could only refine Qi and didn't have a proper spell. When he killed the naked man, Zhao Liangqing, he crushed him with 1 move using the absolute difference in strength, so he didn't experience the strength of a 5th level Qi refinement cultivator. Now, although there was no one around, he wasn't in a hurry to transform. It was easy to kill Chen Yannian in one move, but the whole world would know that he was the one who killed Zhao Liangqing. Therefore, he had to think of a foolproof plan. Right now, he would just play with this old man and train his martial arts. In actual combat, he would understand the essence of the second level of qi refinement. Chen Yannian thought he had the upper hand, but he didn't think that Li Qingshan only saw him as a piece of meat on the chopping board. Li Qingshan was thinking about how to cut him, and before he cut him, he had to have some fun. Seeing that he couldn't easily kill Li Qingshan and that Qian Rongji might escape, he was also worried that what Qian Rongji said was true and that Zhuo Zhibo was really on the way. He had to get away as soon as possible, so he took out an exquisite 100 treasures pouch. Li Qingshan's eyes lit up. He finally saw the biggest goal of this trip. Then he saw Qian Yannian take out a talisman and was about to use it. Li Qingshan bellowed, "Stop, you old bastard!" Qian Yannian mocked, "Are you finally afraid?" Li Qingshan said coldly, "The things in your 100 treasures pouch, no matter if it's spirit pills, spirit stones, or talismans, they are all my property. You better not use them carelessly, or else you'll die very quickly. Your things are mine. Don't use them carelessly." These words were simply outrageous and arrogant to the extreme. Qian Yannian was also angered to the extreme. Without hesitation, the talisman in his hand exploded into a ball of light. A few 100 feet away from the hall, there was a large platform. There were 5 flights of stairs that led to all parts of the Qian residence, and there was only one path up the mountain that led to the main hall. Tonight, because of the birthday banquet, everyone in the Qian residence had come out in full force. All of their power was mobilized. They were alarmed by the unforeseen event on the mountain and gathered from all directions. Even many of the Qian residents who didn't know martial arts or qi refinement wanted to know what was going on. In the distance, a figure could be seen standing in front of the platform. Someone with sharp eyes shouted, "That's Qian Rongji. Kill her." Everyone in the Qian residence heard Li Qingshan's words just now. Many people hated this great traitor of the Qian residence to the point of gnashing their teeth, but when they got closer to take a look, they were all stunned. Qian Rongji was covered in blood, but there was a psychedelic smile on her face. Under her feet, there was a person who looked like a bloody gourd lying on the ground, moaning miserably. And in her hand, there was something that floated along with the night wind. Chapter 140. Many of the more timid ones screamed and almost fell down the stairs. In the main hall behind the holy hall, the rumbling sounds were endless. The magnificent hall was shaking in the darkness as if it would collapse at any moment. Qian Rongji looked back. It seemed that Li Qingshan could still hold on for a while, giving her enough time to do what she wanted to do. She was really grateful to Li Qingshan. Of course, it would be a big mistake to think that her personality had changed. In her mind, the best outcome of this battle would be for Li Qingshan and Qian Yannian to perish together. Master, is that you?" A middle-aged woman recognized the identity of the person on the ground from the hoarse scream. She scolded with a sobbing tone, "Qian Rongji, you slut, you lunatic! What did my master do wrong to you? Not only did you seduce him, you even want to kill him?" "I seduced him?" Qian Rongji licked the blood at the corner of her mouth. "He said he wanted to skin me? I asked him if that was the case, but he didn't say. Do you know?" She kicked the bloody gourd off the platform, causing it to roll down the stairs. As if avoiding the plague, the crowd parted. When everyone's attention was attracted by the bloody body, a wind blade pierced through the crowd, and blood shot up into the sky. The woman who spoke just now had a huge gash from her shoulder to her waist. She looked down in disbelief. This little slut actually dared to attack her? This was the last thought in her mind before she collapsed to the ground. "It seems that you don't know either," Qian Rongji murmured. Dark clouds covered the moon, and the sky was pitch black. Thousands of Qian family members gathered around the platform, and more were coming. The flickering torches illuminated her beautiful blood-stained face, twisting with the flickering light. A luxuriously dressed young man wailed, "Father! Mother!" Then he looked at Qian Rongji with extreme hatred. "Everyone, kill this crazy woman and help great-grandpa." The Qian family will definitely get through this crisis. Upon receiving the order, over 1,000 people rushed forward together. Their imposing manner was enough to scare ordinary people to death. Even qi practitioners would run out of true qi, not to mention that there were more than a dozen first-layer qi practitioners among them. Qian Rongji was in danger. However, there was no fear on her face. With a psychedelic smile, she opened her red lips and casually called out a string of names: Qian Ronghui, Qian Rongqing. Among the people she called out, there were big and small ones, men and women, but the one thing they had in common was that they were all qi practitioners. None of them originally had the surname Qian, but they were adopted by the Qian clan because they had the aptitude to practice qi refinement. Startled, they stopped in their tracks. Haven't you been bullied enough by the Qian clan? They treated us like pigs and dogs, and now we have to die for them? The Qian family is doomed. All of the people of the Qian family will be killed by the Hawkwolf Guard. Qian Xingwei's son, the luxuriously dressed young man, called out, "Don't listen to her nonsense. Great-grandpa will settle everything very soon. All those who betray the Qian family will die horrible deaths." The people with the bloodline of the Qian family all agreed. They pressed forward once again. The forest of blades and spears was less than 10 steps away from Qian Rongji, but due to their fear of Qian Rongji's martial prowess, they could not help but slow down. Before they knew it, the people Qian Rongji had called out had been separated from the crowd. Some of them even looked at them cautiously. Qian Rongji said, "That old bastard Qian Yannian is in the main hall at the back. If he could come out, he would have done so a long time ago. If you don't think for yourselves now, it'll be too late." Rumbles constantly rang out in the main hall. Clearly, an intense battle was taking place. However, the leader of the Qian family who had ruled over ancient Wind City for almost a century, Qian Yannian, had clearly encountered a powerful enemy. If Qian Yannian were here, then all of the objections would cease to exist. However, Qian Yannian was not here. Many people thought uneasily, is the Qian family really going to be destroyed? Just now, the first person to be called out, Qian Ronghui, could not help but ask, "What do you want?" Qian Rongji said, "It's not too late to leave the Qian family right now. Otherwise, when the nest is overturned, no one will be able to escape unscathed." Qian Ronghui hesitated. Many people hesitated as well. The young man called out, "Qian Ronghui, are you bold enough to betray my Qian family?" Qian Rongji said with a demonic voice, "Do you see that? Is this the attitude of the Qian family? Or do you want to die to the wind-entwining blade of the Hawkwolf Guard?" Qian Ronghui glanced at the main hall in the darkness one last time and bellowed out, "All right, I'll leave the Qian family. I have nothing to do with the Qian family anymore." He turned around and made his way down the mountain. He did not plan on getting involved in this mess anymore. He did not resent the Qian family as deeply as Qian Rongji did. With him taking the lead, the others were tempted too. They were about to leave. The people of the Qian family cursed. Many weapons and spears were aimed at Qian Ronghui. Qian Ronghui bellowed, "Move! Did I say you could leave?" Qian Rongji's icy cold voice made Qian Ronghui stop. He turned around and said furiously, "What else do you want?" Qian Rongji said, "If you leave now, you'll be hunted down by the world." Afterwards, she said to everyone, "I know all of you. None of you can just leave like this today. As long as you're not a direct descendant of the Qian family, you can be spared if you offer up the heads of members of the Qian family as proof of your loyalty. Otherwise, only death awaits you." She was in deep danger. Not only did she not beg for mercy and fear, she even threatened everyone fiercely. Everyone panicked. There were only a few direct descendants of the Qian family. Even they did not have the determination to live and die with the Qian family. They were just tied to the Qian family's war chariot. They had no choice but to persevere, not to mention the others. She vaguely understood Li Qingshan's feelings. This feeling was really great. The atmosphere was oppressive to the extreme, and the air was filled with the smell of blood. In this hot summer night, under the illumination of the fire, many beads of sweat rolled down from their foreheads. Everyone looked around vigilantly, trying to distinguish who was not their own kin from the fire and who was a possible proof of allegiance. This century-old clan had a dense web of interpersonal relationships. There were countless grievances and hatred. In the darkness, it was unknown where the first saber fell, but it was unknown where the first scream came from. It was as if a fuse had been lit. The first flash of blood was like a spark falling on a wasteland. It quickly spread into a prairie fire. Someone shouted, "Kill these traitors! Surround the Qian family!" There were also people shouting, "Take revenge!" But there were more screams and wails. Pairs of eyes were dyed red with blood. They did not have the time to distinguish whether the people around them were enemies or relatives. They waved their sabers at anyone who approached them. Talismans turned into lightning and flames, exploding in the crowd. The sound of spears piercing into bodies and sabers cutting through bones interweaved into a soul-calming song. The Qian family mansion turned into a Azura purgatory. And in the center of the purgatory, Qian Rongji laughed crazily. Great joy surged into her heart. All of her memories were burning. She forgot about the potential threat of Qian Yannian. She even forgot about the difference between life and death. She felt that this place was heaven. She was happy now. Even if she died immediately, it did not matter. There were also people who wanted to assassinate this traitor of the Qian family out of anger, and there were even people who became blinded by bloodlust. They tried to kill her. However, in this place, who could possibly kill a second-layer Qi warrior? They were all killed by the wind-entwining saber and turned into corpses that formed a circle around her. Gradually, no one dared to approach her, and this circle of corpses became the only safe haven in this purgatory. None of the people of ancient Wind City could forget this night. They raised their heads and watched from within the city. They watched as the clan that had ruled over ancient Wind City for a century collapsed in the flames of tribulation. Their faces were filled with mixed emotions of fear, surprise, and joy. Most of the Qi practitioners who had come down from the mountain did not leave. They also watched from the darkness. They were extremely surprised and astounded by the horrifying sight in the firelight. No one had expected things to develop like this. Originally, they thought Li Qingshan's declaration was a joke that had overestimated himself, that he was looking to die. However, Qian Yannian would kill 3 Hawkwolf guards with lightning speed before fleeing with the core members of the clan. However, the development of the matter had taken them by surprise. The Qian family was being destroyed. However, Qian Yannian remained in the main hall. He did not stop all of this. It was as if someone had stopped him. That was impossible. Even if a third-layer Qi practitioner and 2 second-layer Qi practitioners worked together, Qian Yannian would not be able to kill them with a single hand. Unless the Hawkwolf guard had someone else, or perhaps Zhuo Zhibua had already arrived in ancient Wine City silently. This was the most logical deduction, and it also explained why Li Qingshan was so arrogant. The Qi practitioners all felt fortunate that they had not remained on the mountain. In their eyes, the Hawkwolf Guard was not an organization that could be reasoned with. As a result, there was even less of a reason for anyone to go up the mountain to save the Qian family. When the flames ran out of fuel, they would be extinguished. The flames of tribulation used people as fuel. Once most people died, they would gradually extinguish as well. In an extremely short amount of time, over 1,000 people were dead or injured. Blood flowed on the mountain steps as corpses littered the ground. In the canopy where no one noticed, little Anne's eyes flickered with blood-red flames. He had seen all of this horrific sight the entire time, but he did not show surprise or fear like ordinary people. Instead, he seemed to be in thought, as if he had comprehended something. Tonight, Li Qingshan had made up his mind to fight, so he did not take him with him, just in case he was trapped in the jar and could move about freely. He still did not trust Li Qingshan at the end of the day, no matter how powerful Li Qingshan was. As a result, he used the darkness to arrive outside the main hall on the mountain, and when he saw this, he was unable to shift his gaze away anymore. Li Qingshan's aura was extremely powerful, so there was no need for him to worry at all. The path of white bone and great beauty had originally been created by a great figure of Buddhism. The essence within it all originated from Buddhism, so he had read many Buddhist scriptures to comprehend the true meaning within. However, the path of white bone and great beauty completely reversed the scriptures, reversing the meaning of the scriptures. The mysteries and mysteries within it were something that even he, who had been confirmed by oxen to be extraordinarily talented, often found puzzling. In Li Qingshan's eyes, he could devour flesh and blood easily, and his cultivation could advance rapidly. He did not even need to ingest pills. However, only he understood the difficulties involved. Hiding in the gloomy jar, he had never felt bored for a single moment. As a matter of fact, he had never even thought about being bored. He constantly thought about the path of white bone and great beauty, like an ascetic monk in secluded cultivation. Today, when he saw this, he comprehended something. Chapter 141. The spirit talismans transformed into lightning, instantly lighting up the dark hall. However, it couldn't hide the two red dots that suddenly lit up. Holy Hall! The blazing white lightning lashed fiercely against the iron-like skin, but didn't leave a mark. Xianxia took a step back. Looking at the tower-like monster in front of him, he revealed a panicked expression. Demon, demon. Although he didn't sense a trace of demonic aura, the enormous, almost tangible pressure still pressed down on his chest, making it hard for him to breathe. His mind was a mess. How could the seemingly ordinary and weak second-layer Qi refinement youth have such a transformation? It was completely beyond his imagination. Li Qingshan unfurled his body. The sharp horns on his head almost touched the ceiling. He lowered his head and looked at Xianxia. He said in a booming voice, "I told you to stop. Why won't you listen?" Xianxia roared. The two gunmetal Qi swords turned into two rays of golden light and stabbed at Li Qingshan. It was difficult for his huge body to dodge such an attack, and Li Qingshan had no intention of dodging at all. Before the gunmetal Qi swords could touch Li Qingshan's skin, they crashed into the turtle shell-like shield and were countered by the demonic Qi. They turned into powder and couldn't reform again. Xianxia instinctively touched his 100 treasures pouch. There were life-saving talismans and spirit medicines that could be used to turn the tables. The 100 treasures pouch was a Qi refinement cultivator's second life. An iron pillar-like index finger shot out a claw that was as sharp as a machete. With a sharp clang, it stopped in front of Xianxin's forehead. Xianxia froze, not daring to move an inch. The speed was so fast that he couldn't react. If Li Qingshan wanted to kill him, the sharp claw would have pierced through his head and taken his life. Xianxia trembled. "What do you want? I can give you anything. Don't kill me." Li Qingshan hooked the 100 treasures pouch from Xianxin's hand and held it between his fingers. Then he picked up the toy-like wind-entwining blade. A complicated expression of flattery, fawning, and fear appeared on Xianxin's face. Then it collapsed like a mask. Without any hesitation, Li Qingshan pierced Xianxin's chest with his saber. For a fifth-layer Qi practitioner, this wasn't a fatal wound, but it was enough to make him lose most of his battle prowess, especially for a 100-year-old man. Xianxia widened his eyes and opened his mouth, wanting to say something. Li Qingshan flicked his index finger, breaking Xianxin's jaw like a siege crossbow. Then, Li Qingshan unsheathed his wind-entwining saber and took a few steps back. His figure gradually shrunk and finally returned to human form. He said to Xianxia, "Now, let's continue. Pay attention, I'm going to kill my way over." After losing his 100 treasures pouch, 2 gunmetal Qi swords, and being stabbed in the chest, Xianxia was like a heavily injured beast that had its claws and teeth plucked out. He let out meaningless roars. As if he knew it was impossible to escape, Xianxia forcibly sealed his wound with true Qi, stirred up all the true Qi in his body, and pounced at Li Qingshan. Xianxia didn't know who he was, but a gust of wind hit him in the face. A layer of pale golden luster appeared on Xianxin's body. Li Qingshan slashed down with all his strength, but Xianxia didn't dodge. His hands formed pale golden Qi blades and stabbed at Li Qingshan's ribs. Clang! The wind-entwining saber, which contained Li Qingshan's true Qi and great strength, broke through Xianxin's gunmetal true Qi and left a bloody mark on his shoulder. Li Qingshan also turned a blind eye to it. The wind-entwining saber slashed at Qian Yanyan's neck. There was another sound of metal clashing, and 2 stabs of pain came from below his ribs. Qian Yanyan's knife hand easily penetrated the black wolf robe, which could withstand crossbow bolts, and Li Qingshan's true qi. However, it couldn't penetrate Li Qingshan's tough day demon ox hide. A series of thunderous sounds rang out. In the narrow space, the two didn't take a step back, and neither did they dodge. They attacked each other for dozens of times. The black wolf robe on Li Qingshan's body was tattered beyond recognition. Qian Yanyan was also covered in blood, and the wound on his chest was constantly oozing blood. Qian Yanyan's eyes were red, and he was like a mad tiger. In the end, he didn't care about any moves, and he grabbed Li Qingshan and slammed into the pillar. Dong 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 dong. 5 pillars collapsed in a row. The hall shook, and smoke and dust rose everywhere. Li Qingshan's body was covered in dust, and he cut a sorry figure. However, his eyes were still as calm as water. This kind of crazy attack obviously couldn't hurt him, and this kind of earth-shattering battle effect was exactly what he wanted. A 5th-layer Qi practitioner who knew he was going to die and fought like a cornered beast was tenacious beyond Li Qingshan's imagination. Even in a situation where he was heavily injured, he still displayed shocking battle strength. Li Qingshan discovered that with just the strength of a 2nd-layer Qi practitioner, even if his body was strong, it would be very difficult to win. Under the violent bombardment of true Qi, Li Qingshan didn't even have the strength to fight back. Finally, a punch landed solidly on his chest. He didn't control his body, and let it fly more than 100 feet away, landing heavily on the platform. He didn't forget to say, "So powerful." Of course, all of this had a purpose. He wanted to kill Qian Yanyan openly, but he definitely couldn't kill him in one move. He wanted to purposely cause a commotion, draw a line between him and Zhao Liangqing's death, and hide his identity as a demon. Not only could he show weakness to his potential enemies to numb their nerves, but he could also confuse some of his potential enemies so that they wouldn't be in a hurry to attack him. This would give him more time to grow. This was a very deep plan. But before Li Qingshan could feel proud of the show he had directed, he was stunned by the scene around him. The thick smell of blood enveloped the entire platform. The wet blood had dried and turned black. Thousands of corpses, men, women, adults, and children, were piled up on the platform and the mountain path. Those who hadn't seen it before would never be able to imagine what kind of tragic scene it was. There were countless hands and feet, countless twisted and hideous faces, and eyes that were wide open, unable to close in peace. Li Qingshan was engaged in a battle to the death with Qian Yanyan in the hall, so he was in no mood to pay attention to the battle cries outside. He basically turned a deaf ear to it. Now that he saw it with his own eyes, even though he had personally killed many people in the past and originally thought he had grown accustomed to blood and death, he still felt greatly shocked. Just who was it? What had they done? The moon emerged from the dark clouds. The moonlight coated everything with a layer of silver frost. The surroundings were deathly silent. There was not a single sound, as if the creatures of the natural world were all stunned, afraid to disturb them. However, the person who had caused all of this, Qian Rongji, currently wielded a water-splitting barb, sending the lucky survivors who were still moaning and breathing from the pile of corpses into hell one by one. Qian Ronghui retreated with a struggle. "No. Rongji, there's no grievance between us." He was the first person to be sucked into the frenzy of blood. However, with his strength at the peak of the 1st-layer of Qi practitioner, he still managed to survive. However, his true Qi had already been completely depleted, and he was covered in wounds. He basically had no strength left at all. However, Qian Rongji said, "For years ago, on the 15th day of the 8th month, you called me a whore." The water-splitting barb stabbed into Qian Ronghui's head mercilessly. Qian Yanyan chased her out of the hall. When he saw this, he immediately froze up. His mind recovered a sliver of clarity. Was the Qian family finished just like this? Qian Rongji turned around and looked at Qian Yanyan. There was no fear on her face. Instead, she said with great delight, "Grandfather, do you see this? Your children and grandchildren are all dead." With a wild howl, Qian Yannian sank into an even deeper madness. He ignored Li Qingshan and lunged towards Qian Rongji. Li Qingshan gripped the chipped wind-entwining blade firmly, but he did not swing it. This woman was vicious and capricious. She had done him harm time and time again, so how could he save her? Watching Qian Yannian lunge over, Qian Rongji fished out 3 fire talismans, which turned into fireballs and shot towards Qian Yannian. Boom, boom, boom. There were 3 explosions. Flames surged into the air, and the shockwaves swept up the remains of the corpses. However, before Qian Rongji could even celebrate, she saw Qian Yannian forcefully charge through the flames. His sparse hair had all been singed, and his body was covered in charred marks. However, he still charged towards her without any regard for the consequences. A sliver of fear finally appeared on Qian Rongji's face, but she did not flee. She gripped the water-splitting barb firmly and stabbed it towards Qian Yannian with an azure streak of light. Suddenly, a verdant vine sprouted from the ground, wrapping around Qian Yannian like a snake. Gung metal true qi erupted from his body and tore through the vine, but he was stopped for a moment. The azure streak of light pierced his chest. Blood gushed out from the wound from Li Qingshan's attack, unable to stop it anymore. Qian Yannian took a few more steps forward, and even more vines sprouted from beneath his feet, wrapping around him. He was like a moth trapped in a spider's web, struggling more and more powerless. Before anyone knew it, Diao Fei had returned. He held a seal in his right hand before his chest as he stared at Qian Yannian with all his attention. The vines were a technique he had used. Only now did Li Qingshan realize that Diao Fei did not practice the innate method of condensing qi. This was probably the cultivation method of the Green Vine Mountain. Qian Rongji did not seem to expect her attack to be effective either. She rejoiced madly, but she did not rush up to finish him off. Instead, she took a dozen or so steps back cautiously. "Grandfather, your wives, concubines, and children are all here. Do you see them? They're right next to your feet. Oops, you've kicked your beloved concubine's head. But it's fine. I've also helped you kill those traitors who betrayed the Qian family. What do you think? I've repaid the kindness of the Qian family." Qian Yannian roared, but he had already reached the end of his rope in his battle against Li Qingshan. That lunge had already been the last of his strength. He relied on a deep breath of true qi to keep himself alive. He stared straight at Qian Rongji as if he wanted to gouge out a piece of her flesh. However, Qian Rongji only said with a smile, "I remember you promised me in the past that you'd let me be the leader of the Qian family. Of course, I know you were lying to me. How could you let an outsider, and a woman at that, become the leader? But now, there's no one else who can inherit the position of leader, so I'll be the only one left." Then she became vexed. "But there's no one left in the Qian family now. There's no point in being the leader, so I'll just return it to you, the first and last leader of the Qian family." Every single word from Qian Rongji was like a sword, piercing Qian Yannian and making him tremble all over. However, with his shattered jaw, he was unable to say anything else. He raised his head and coughed up a mouthful of blood before the vines completely swallowed him. Welcome to Immortal Cultivation Audiobooks, your gateway to the mystical world of Xianxia. Dive into legendary tales of martial arts, spiritual growth, and immortal ascension. Here, we bring you full-length English audiobooks of the best Wuxia and Xianxia stories, from young prodigies to ancient sect wars. Perfect for fans of Against the Gods, Martial World, and tales of demons and gods.